Alright, fuck it. I just kind of wanted to make another video because I've been watching shit. Like, what was day 3 of the RNC was pretty much all like right to life. Like, it was all anti-abortion. They had the anti-abortion lady that used to work for Planned Parenthood. Man, like her speech, that was fucking rough, man. That was rough to just sit through. Oh, like, it was, oh, if you haven't seen it, I don't even know what her fucking name is. Just look up, I don't know, RNC clips. I don't fucking know. Find her. Dude, it was big head lady. She was very passionate and she was very graphic. She was very graphic. And it made me think a lot about the subject. Because when I first started this, you know, the whole YouTube commentary thing, I was pretty, I don't give a shit about it. It was not a situation, as far as I was concerned, that was in any way, I was extraordinarily pragmatic about it. I would not want to raise a child out of wedlock with a woman that I did not plan to get married to. That I didn't really see myself wanting to be with for an extended amount of time. Like, I wouldn't want to raise a child in that because that would just fuck up the child. So I would figure if I was just kind of dating a girl and I wasn't really all that serious about it or whatever, or, you know, it was early into the relationship or something like that, or, you know, things were at a point where they weren't working or something like that, I would be like, abortion. You know, I don't want to raise a kid in that circumstance because it's just going to fuck up a kid. You know, that would just be... Ugh. And I figured if I was with a girl that I was either married to or planning to get married to, and she wound up getting pregnant, I would be like, cool, daddy. You know, like, I would be like, yay, like, that's awesome, you know, because I would not mind raising a child with a woman that I saw myself being with for the long haul, you know. And so it just wasn't, I always thought more about it like that, like it was the betterment of the child. And then I, you know, started doing this, and, you know, abortion always comes up, and this, that, and the other thing, and I kind of saw the attitude about abortion turn evil. Like, I mean, it's difficult to explain any other way. Like, that Michelle Wolf thing, oh my God, like, I was daydreaming at work today, as I often do, and I was daydreaming that I had like my own late night talk show type thing, and what I would do if the producers came up to me and said, you're going to have Michelle Wolf on tonight. First of all, I would say, no, I'm not, because I would not want to interview her. Why the fuck would I? 'Cause, like, that's just that. Here's the reason. I would be happy to interview her. Let me just make it clear. On this channel right here, I would be happy to interview her. I think that would be a blast. And I think you guys would love it. And I think it would make my career. But, like, if I'm doing the Tonight Show, fuck no. Because there's no fucking way I am not there. I would, man. And here is my daydream. If they forced me to do it, if they were like, no, you're under contract, you're going to do it, I would come out for my monologue and just kind of stare off into space for a little while. And then I would kind of like look around in the audience at people. And then I'd probably go and like sit on the stairs next to somebody just out in the audience and be like, I have a dilemma. You know, and I'd look at maybe the person next to me and just be like, what's your name? You know, like, and just fucking explain without explaining at all, just extraordinarily vague, that I have a problem. I have a moral quandary that I don't know what to do. There's a lot of things resting on my shoulders. I have an entire crew that works for me. I have all these people I have to think of. You look at the guy with the camera and the lights, and you got this dude, the band. All these people are responsible for me, like, because, man, and I'm in a real quandary. I don't know what to do. And then just kind of be like, well, I don't know. And I'd get up and I'd probably sit there and kind of stare off his face for another minute and then be like, I guess to heck with it. I know what I'm going to do. I'd be like, we're going to have a very interesting show tonight. Coming up after the break will be infanticide advocate Michelle Wolf. And then I just walk to the desk and sit down and just be like, oh shit, here we go. Dude, and the daydream didn't go very good from there. Needless to say, I got fired. But I made a big stink about it, so it was a lot of fun in my head. But nevertheless, because, like, that kind of shit, when she came out with a fucking band at a parade, like, celebrating abortion. Women should be able to have abortions like Happy Meals at McDonald's. I'm like, because it's just like, listening to other people talk about it, like Ben Shapiro, the really religious types, listen to them talk about it, they don't make a religious argument. They make a human argument. And it's like, and I think the last person I heard to say it was Michael Knowles, but I think Ben Shapiro was the first person I heard to say it. He said, I just cannot fathom an argument that exists wherein I will willingly say, well, then I understand why you want to kill that baby. And I was like, I'm like, oh my God, I can't think of one either. And then you start looking into, statistics and stuff like that, and how many babies with Down syndrome get aborted, and that's just sad. Because it's like, wow, you just didn't even want to try. Like, that's just sad. And like, with all this racial shit going on, one of the things that is getting bandied around is 80% of Planned Parenthoods are in black neighborhoods. Now look, this is an anecdote. Take it for what it is. The neighborhood that I grew up in, when I was growing up in the 80s, was extraordinarily white. Like, I remember learning about Martin Luther King Jr. and the I Have a Dream speech, and reading it in class and shit like that. And I remember thinking it was beautiful, that I thought it was just amazing. And I didn't know a single black person, had never seen one in my life, except for in books. And I thought it was a very beautiful speech. I really, really liked it. I didn't know why. It's just, instinctively, I was like, that sounds good. Like that's a cool dream, man. I'm like, I hope we get that. And, for a while there, we almost kind of did. And, black people started to move into town. And it was like, now there's black people in town. And, because when you saw them, they were black people in town. They didn't look or act or behave or do anything any different than the white people in town. And it was kind of like, oh, black person doing white people things. Go figure. They mow their lawns too. Like, and it was stupid realizations when you think about it, in retrospect. But it's like, I don't know, that's what you think when it first starts to happen. And now, like when I moved last year away from that neighborhood, at that time it was in 2018 or whatever. It's so integrated. There's so many different people. You see Indian people all over the place. You see Arabic people all over the place. You see Asian people all over the place. You see black people all over the place, white people all over the place. Everybody's everywhere in that town now. And we had an abortion clinic. It was a naughty thing. There was always people standing out in front of it with fucking those sandwich board placards where it's board on each side, and they would just kind of sit there and twirl their thing, and there other people would stand there, and they just stand out in front of it, and people would drive by and whatever. And I almost never saw any cars in the parking lot. Like I never even thought I saw the place was open ever. And the place was about the size of like a convenience store. You know, imagine like a Circle K or a Shell station or whatever. You know, like one of those convenience store kind of gas stations. About that size. Shit, maybe a little smaller. And so, you know, it wasn't very big. And I was kind of like, you know, to me, that's what abortion clinics look like. They were small, kind of tucked out of the way places where it said, you know, parental, you know, whatever, clinic, you know, something like that, you know. And it always had 2 or 3 old people standing out in front of it with signs. That's what an abortion clinic was to me, when, you know, from my hometown. And then I moved to where I live now. And where I live now is still pretty integrated, but more black people, you know, there's a lot more black people than white people. A lot more black people than anybody else. So it's a black neighborhood. It would be what is classically called a black neighborhood. But we don't really do that so much anymore in the suburbs, like, that I've been in. Like, and I mean that literally, been in, not lived in, been in. Like, you see kind of everybody, you just drive through the place. So, yeah, like, you know, so I don't know if Ohio is somehow special, but, you know, everywhere that's a suburb seems to be pretty fucking integrated. And I don't ever really go through cities, so, because there's only like 4 cities in Ohio, so, what are you gonna do? But yeah, so, so I move up here, black neighborhood, right? And down the street from me, like, and I'm actually moving closer to it, and it was actually kind of a thought in my mind, because at the time when I applied for my new apartment, the lady said I was going to be on the 6th floor, and she pointed to a building over that way. Not that the direction matters to you, but it mattered to me. And I'm like, wow, I might be able to see the Planned Parenthood from my apartment. And wouldn't that be interesting? Because, wow, that would be interesting. This is just to be able to, like, get out on my balcony and be smoking a cigarette and, like, look down and be like, I wonder how many babies are being murdered right now. You know, like, oh, that would drive me nuts. Thank God I am not. I'm on the other side of the complex from the fucking Planned Parenthood. But the Planned Parenthood is, right off the expressway. You get off the expressway, you hang a right, and then you drive down a couple of blocks and bam, Planned Parenthood. Right off the expressway. You cannot miss it either, because it looks like it's about 7 to 8 stories tall, and it says Planned Parenthood in giant letters on it. Now, there's like a, I don't know, it's like a mattress warehouse or some shit like that, you know, that's right off the expressway, you know, and it has a giant fucking sign too, but like, it's Planned Parenthood. Like, to me, abortion clinics were always small, little out of the way places that had some euphemism. That they didn't say Planned Parenthood, they said, you know, parent, you know, Parenthood Clinic or shit like that, you know what I mean? So I don't even remember what the fucking place was actually called, but it wasn't Planned Parenthood. I mean, this place is a giant fucking building, Planned Parenthood, and I'm like the first time I saw it, I went, holy shit, that is a big building. Like, that was the first thought that I had. That is a giant building. Because I'm like, you know, in the town I used to come from, it wasn't the type of town where you had a lot of abortions, because you didn't have people fucking up like that, you know what I mean? And it was a small town, so most likely you wound up the situation was like, well, now you gotta get married, you know, like that kind of shit happened more often than not. Or you know, the girls just raise their kids, you know, like there's a whole lot of weird shit going on with that too. I'll get into that in a whole nother fucking video. But yeah, so, you know, like I said, the place almost never looked like it was open. There was never cars in the parking lot. The lights were never fucking on. Like, it was almost like it was just there for show. And this thing is a 7-8 story tall monstrosity. I mean, it stands out. Dude, when you get off the expressway here, there's apartment buildings that are big. And there's, you know, like gas stations and restaurants, and then it gets into the town, you know what I mean? And like, it's the biggest building in probably a 20-mile radius as far as height and size. I mean, it is it is fuck off massive. Another thing I've noticed living in black communities, in my old hometown, there was a fucking bank everywhere. Like, there, man, I could, like, it was funny as hell, because I dated a girl that was way out of town. And, as I was taking her through my hometown the first time, I was laughing, because, you know, we're getting towards the exit, and I'm like, this is going to be hysterical. And she goes, why? And I'm like, I'm just wondering what you're going to comment about first. And she goes, what do you mean? And I'm like, well, as we drive through town, I'm just wondering what it is you comment about first. And she goes, okay. And as I'm driving her through town, she's like, man, you guys have a lot of churches. And I was like, yes, we do. We have a lot of churches. There's like a church on every fucking main street, at least one every 2 miles or so. Churches fucking everywhere. There's literally one like intersection in the town where like within the same like kind of 4-block radius, there is literally a church for like every denomination of Christians. It's fucking, man, it's my hometown. And she's like, was that what you, and I'm like, yeah, it was either that or banks. Because a bank is another thing. In my hometown, there are a million banks. Banks and churches everywhere. And I haven't seen a lot of churches around here. There's a couple. I've seen a couple. I have not seen any banks. I've seen a lot of check cashing places. And there's the Planned Parenthood that is just massive. These are like some kind of stark observations of what it's like to be a white boy who grew up in a very white neighborhood that turned very integrated to moving into a very integrated black neighborhood. It's very different. And like, again, I'm also much closer to an actual actually, no, I'm not. So yeah. Like, I'm not even closer to an actual city. I'm actually a little bit further away from the nearest big city. So, shit, man. Like, I don't know. Man, it is some weird shit when you think about it. But, I don't know, man. It's those things, and I really notice it. Not a lot of churches, not a lot of banks, a lot of check cashing places, and the biggest Planned Parenthood I have ever seen in my life. Really makes you think. Really makes you think. Like, maybe there is something to institutional racism. I don't know. But if, you know, mayhaps we're looking in the wrong direction too. Somebody else said, I was watching, it was another Michael Knowles video. I was watching another Michael Knowles video, and he was talking to some other dude the other day, and he said that Saul Alinsky said, blame your opponents for what you do. And all they talk about now is systemic racism. And now I'm living in a black community that has few churches, no banks, a lot of check cashing places, and a giant Planned Parenthood. And if there's 3 things that the Democrats are really good at, it's not giving a shit about church, making sure that it's really easy to kill your baby, and giving you as much financial aid as you can handle. Alright, yeah. So this will probably be my last video, because I'm moving. Tomorrow, I looked up the weather. Tomorrow and Sunday, I think it's gonna rain all through the night, and then I think by like noon, it said it's gonna stop. So I need to make 13 trips roughly. It takes me a half an hour to load the car and unload the car. So that's an hour round trip. So I have about 13 hours worth of work that I can begin tomorrow at noon, and it's going to be cloudy and hopefully cool the whole weekend. Oh, I got this in the bag.